Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to church. We got some air conditioning in here. Obviously, you guys can feel that. First things first, kind of a last-minute addition to my kind of intro here. We're actually going to be acting as a community cooling center. I never knew what a cooling center was until this heat wave, but basically anyone that you interact with, or even yourself or family members, whoever from the area, if they're struggling at home and it's super hot in their house, or maybe they're working outside and they don't have air conditioning at home to go back to, they're welcome here until 6 p.m. tonight, and then tomorrow from noon to 6 as well. And so I just wanted to kind of pass that on in conversations you're having, even with people you see that maybe are on the streets or anything. If they're struggling and they need a place to hang out, noon to 6 tomorrow, and then until 6 p.m. today. And so I wanted to give you guys kind of an update on Southside Youth. It's been a while since, there's a lot of faces I don't even recognize here. You probably don't even know me. I'm one of the pastors here on the Southside Church team. But 11 weeks ago, we got the green light to resume our in-person youth ministry meetings. And honestly, it had been, 5-6 months, I think, since the last time. And online youth ministry is a lot different than in-person youth ministry. So we kind of had to reassemble the team and get ready to do that. And there's new restrictions and regulations. And we're a church that's always saying, we have a seat saved for you. And one of the restrictions was we only have a certain amount of seats saved, right? And so we're like, man, how are we going to do this? And I just wanted to give you guys kind of an update on how God has shown up over the last 11 weeks. We've had 160 kids from grades 6 to 12 come out, which is amazing. 31 of those students have actually accepted Jesus at Southside Youth in the last 11 weeks. We got to show some love for that. That's been absolutely amazing. 20 senior high students have stepped up and joined a small group for the very first time because they really believe that commitment lasts longer in community, which has been really special to watch. And then, on a personal note, just seeing how many kids have actually built friendships with each other, actually built relationships with leaders to the point where junior high kids are coming up and hugging the leaders and saying, I'm gonna miss you for the summer. It was almost so heartbreaking that I was like, we can't stop for the summer, we have to keep going. But we're excited to build on that momentum in September and continue to just be the church and be there for our young people. And we really do believe that this summer is gonna be one of rejuvenation, and then we're gonna absolutely get back at it in September. And so I'm pretty biased as the youth pastor, but if you do wanna join the team or hear some more stories, I have a lot of stories for you guys as well. And so we have an awesome service plan for you guys today. If you do need to step out at any point, you can leave out at any of the entrances you came in, look for the section hosts wearing the lanyards, and they can point you in the right direction to the washroom, answer any questions that you might have. And so we're gonna jump into a time of worship now through music. And whether you've been going to church, maybe this is your first time ever, first time in a long time, or maybe you're like me when I was younger and you were going for your whole life, but you're like, man, what is worship music? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just do what my parents, can I sit? Are there expectations? I just wanna say we worship here to create a moment with God. Maybe life is going great for you and that's awesome. So maybe your moment with God today is one of gratitude, where you say, maybe recentering around the truth that all good things in our lives come from God. Or maybe you're like, a lot of us over the last year and a half, and maybe things are tough. Maybe you have some questions for God today. Maybe you have some honest moments with God today, and we don't project any expectation on you for how you worship and how you create that moment with God today. And so what I say to Southside Youth students is you can sit, you can stand, you can raise your hands, just stay off your phone. I don't think I need to tell you guys that, but that's pretty much what we believe in here at Southside Church. So we're gonna get into it, and I'm gonna pass things over right now to Southside Worship.
Time and space could not contain you. You are the everlasting light. You are the glory love that song. And I love that promise that song sings about. That no matter what happens to you, or maybe something that you've done, nothing that happens to us or anything that we do can ever separate us from the love of God. We can't outrun it, and we can't outrun that everlasting light. So this next song that we're going to be singing, it actually reminds me of the series that we're in. Pastor Mike is walking us through the 10 Commandments, and we're seeing consistently every single week, every time God puts something in front of us, he tells us, do this. This is for you. This is your next step. We see that every time he asks us to do that, it's because he has something for us. And what he has for us is a life of purpose, a life of meaning, a life of adventure, and of love and of peace. And so the next song that we're going to be singing is called Available. And the chorus starts with just saying, I hear you call, I'm available. So that's my prayer for myself this morning, and I invite that to be your prayer for you too. As we stand here, let's come before God and say, God, I'm here and I'm available. I'm not perfect, and you know I'm not perfect, God, but you are. And thank you that you want to work your perfect plan through my life. So let's keep that in mind, keep that in our heart as we sing this next one.
Hey, my name is Brian. I'm 19 years old. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time playing soccer, basketball, hockey, anything that I could kick or throw. I loved the feeling of being a part of a team. I was always scared to be the odd one out, and I did what I could do to fit in. And because nobody around me was focused on God, neither was I. In grade 3, my family and I moved to a small town, far away from my friends and the places I knew. I found it really difficult to make friends there. It felt like if you weren't born there, you'd always be an outsider. I remember going out to play recess and being the last kid picked for a team, or I'd be in class picking partners and I would be the one left out. And for me, who had always been such a social guy and knowing how to fit in, being an outsider was really painful. Even though I was really young, I remember vividly the hurt and loneliness I felt. In grade 7, we moved back to Chilliwack, and I ended up going to a school where all of my old hockey friends went. Hockey had always been a huge part of my life, and it's something that I'd always known I would pursue, even after high school. Being back in a town that I knew, with friends that made me feel welcome, felt great after so many years of feeling like I was on the outside looking in. I belonged again on my hockey team, at school. I always had people around me. But in grade 12, all that changed. I was playing junior B hockey and was cut from the team. I was devastated of this loss and turned to food as my main source of comfort. I spun into a pretty bad mental state and was up to 300 pounds. I couldn't find the motivation to work off the weight, which deepened my lack of confidence and made me question my worth. But I knew that I wanted to play hockey again and be a part of a team again, so eventually I got to work and lost 55 pounds in 3 months. I went on to play hockey after graduation in Alberta and had the most fun I've ever had during a season. A few teams around Canada, and actually a couple overseas in Poland and Sweden, were interested in me coming to play for them. But then COVID happened and all of those options went away. I ended up moving back home, and being a super outgoing guy, the loneliness that came with COVID was really hard for me. No more teams, no more games, no more opportunities. And I didn't really know where my life was headed. It felt like just when things were starting to go right, it all got ripped away from me, and I felt pretty low. It was right around this time that my family and I felt like it was time to go back to church. The first time walking through the doors at Southside was one of the most joyful experiences of my life. I never felt like I was an outsider right from the first Sunday. I felt so welcomed by so many people. Because of COVID, my first time attending an in-person gathering was actually when I got baptized. When my mom told me that her and my dad were getting baptized, I knew it was my next step too. I wanted to take a leap of faith and start fresh. It was Lucas, one of the pastors at Southside, who baptized me, and he had a special place in my heart because of that. Before he dunked me, he was really concerned about me cranking my head on the other side of the tank, so he made sure I buckled at the knees, and I will never forget what he said after. He said, "If I can baptize you, I can baptize anybody." I smiled so big when he said that and thought it was just awesome. It's a first experience that I'll never forget. Immediately after I was baptized, as we were heading out of the church, Lucas quickly pulled me aside and started to talk to me about the young adult guys group that he had led and asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And I said, for sure I'm in. It's been awesome connecting with Lucas and the rest of the guys in our group, being able to talk about life, just hang out with such an incredible group of guys. It's awesome. I feel like I found people who accept me as I am, and I feel a true sense of belonging. Shortly after joining my small group, I started serving in the youth, and that has been such a great way to help and spread God's word to the younger generation. Little did I know at the time that getting baptized wasn't just an awesome next step in following God's plan for me, it was also a turning point for me in my life. It would set me up for more than I could ever imagine. Taking my next step of baptism was the best decision I could have ever made for this phase of my life, and I'm so glad I did it. In the last few months at Southside, I've met some amazing new people and learned so many new things. I'm so thankful that through all the twists and turns in my life, God has still been leading me. He's brought me to exactly where I am now. He's teaching me not to dwell on the negative thoughts that I have about myself that used to tear me up inside. I'm learning not to sweat the small stuff and care so much about what other people think of me. For a long time, I felt like I was walking around sort of slumped, feeling bad about myself and really discouraged. Now with God on my side and some amazing new friends, I'm walking taller than ever.
What's one thing that I've never regretted doing? I've never regretted giving someone the love that they need or listening to someone when they need to be listened to. Your generosity matters.
Well, good morning, Southside Church online and Southside Church in person. Can we thank Brian again for that amazing story, baptism story? Yeah, pretty cool. I say it all the time, and I really mean it. It's a privilege, whether you're online or in person right now, for me to spend this time with you. Truly one of the joys of my life. It's funny, too, because before COVID, we would be having church in a school gymnasium. And back at the time, it was about 40 degrees outside. We could knock it down to about 36 in the gym. And in the winter, if it was about 4 degrees outside, we could jack it up to about 7 in the gym. And it got me thinking that if you are here for the first time or for the first time in a long time, there's something that you should probably know. Number one, we love you. We are so glad you're here. In fact, if it's your first time here or your second or third time, why don't you take a minute sometime today and just text the keyword hello to 604-670-3040. We have a little gift we'd like to give you just to say, man, thanks for checking us out. It's kind of a bold thing to step into church for the first time or for the first time in a long time. But there's something you should know about like this place, right? Like I'm standing on stage right now and I'm like, I'm a little chilly. And the reason is because years and years ago, a bunch of us got together and we started dreaming this dream. And we started saving money and giving as generously and as sacrificially as we could because we wanted a place to invite you into. We wanted a place that physically, on a hot day like today, you could come in and be refreshed. And on a cold day, like we'll have later on in the winter, you could come in and be warm and be comforted. But spiritually speaking, I guess the same thing is true. We want this place to be a place of comfort, of restoration, of refreshment, of help. So whether you are here right now or watching online, that's my belief, that's my plan for this service. I think this service is actually going to reframe the way that you think about contentment and hope, and your role in contentment and hope. We've been looking at the 10 Commandments through the lens of James chapter 4, verse 8. James chapter 4, verse 8 says this: if you draw near to the Lord will draw near to you. It's really interesting because I want you to think about something that I think is true of every single human being on the planet right now. I believe for every one of us, deep down inside, we have an idea or at least an inkling of what we want our life to be. That we want purpose in a world that can seem kind of aimless sometimes. That we want peace in a world that can seem really chaotic and anxious sometimes. That we want power in a world that can make us feel kind of powerless sometimes. That we want love and grace and mercy. We want to move past our past. We want hope and vision and eternity. But at the same time that it's true that deep down inside we feel like we want those things, there's another part of us that says, I don't think I can pull that off. That's a pretty long shopping list of things that I really, really desire. I don't think I can do that on my own. And that's where James chapter 4, verse 8 comes in. In fact, Jesus said it this way. He says, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you as well. James 4, verse 8 says, hey, narrow it down to one thing. There's this whole list of things that you want, like deep down inside of you. Just do one thing, draw near to God. And then he'll draw near to you. And everything else will look after itself. So in other words, here's what I'm saying. These 10 commandments, these are 10 invitations from God to you and to me. God's saying, hey, draw near to me, and I'll look after it. I'll draw near to you. And so we are on the 8th commandment. I'm on a massive roll. I've been memorizing commandments left, right, and center. You've been blown away, and I don't blame you. Commandment number 8, Exodus 20, verse 15. No stealing. I memorized, thank you, whoever started it, thank you. It's a, jerks. No stealing. No stealing seems real simple. A little more complicated, just a little bit more complicated than, don't go steal that sour dino from Costco. I don't know why I said sour dino. Okay, but the Bible from the beginning to the end talks a lot about resources and finances, and particularly our attitude and our use of resources and finances. So no stealing is a little bit broader. In fact, I think one of the best summaries of God's plan for our resources and our finances is found in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 2. It says this, ill-gotten gain. What an interesting phrase. Ill-gotten gain brings no lasting happiness. Right living does. So in other words, stealing is a little bit broader. It's like ill-gotten gain. So on one hand, like stealing at its most simple form is you walk into a place and you take something that doesn't belong to you. So when I was a teenager, I stole things all the time. My buddies and I, when we were bored and we wanted a little bit of an adrenaline boost, we would just go shoplift things. That's what we would do. Really cool. I know. It's like, wow. And I remember the very last thing that I ever stole was a cassette tape. Back in the day, music used to be on cassette tapes. Okay? So I stole the Beastie Boys. I still remember the way the cover looked. License to Ill was the name of the album. And thank you. And I almost got caught. I actually did get caught. And then I got myself uncaught and I ran for it. But something inside of me said, that wasn't cool. I don't think I'll do that again. And I remember thinking in all those years where I was stealing a lot of things, I thought, man, like I think the Bible says something about thou shalt not steal. So like I wonder if I steal this cassette tape and I'm listening to You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party, is it gonna like melt inside of my cassette deck and my car's gonna blow up because I stole it? That never happened. According to Proverbs 10 verse 2, that's not really the way it works, right? Ill-gotten gain brings no lasting happiness. Here's what I'm suggesting. That if you live your life trying to gain a life worth living by taking from other people, you will lose. By taking from others, you will lose what you wanted to gain the most. If you live your life, like deep down inside, wanting to gain a life worth living by taking from other people, what you're gonna find is that by taking from other people, deep down inside of yourself, you will find yourself moving away from that life that you want to live. Moving away from contentment, moving away from joy, moving away from gratitude, moving away from the life that we want. Ill-gotten gain. So yes, it's stealing a Beastie Boys cassette, but there's other things too. Lying for financial gain is stealing. When I was 14 years old, I got a job as a gas jockey at the South Hill Fast Gas in Red Deer, Alberta. I love that job. For those of you who don't know what a gas jockey is, again, let me explain, okay? So back in the day, if you were in Red Deer, Alberta, and you needed to fill your tank up with gas, you would drive into South Hill Fast Gas. On your way to the pumps, you would go over like this air hose, and it would make this noise. Okay, and then if I wasn't paying attention, I would hear that noise, and I would come jogging out to your car. And I would say something like this, hey, how are you? Fill her up? And quite often you would say, yep. So I'd start pumping your gas, and then I would come over to your window again, and I would say, can I check your oil? And if you said yes, you would pop the hood. I would go in, I would check your oil. If you needed a liter, I would say, do you want a liter of oil? And you would say yes, probably, and I would take a funnel and put some engine oil in your motor. I would wash all your windows. When I was done with that, you might say to me, hey, can you grab me a Crispy Crunch and a Coke? So I would run back to the shack, I would grab you a Crispy Crunch and a Coke. If you paid by cash, I had change. If you paid by credit card, I had like this massive machine that I would bring out, like this big swoop back and forth machine that I would process your credit card payment. And then you would drive away. Oil in your engine, gas in your junk food on the way to your stomach, and clean windows. And you never got out of your car. And it makes me laugh because boomers sometimes say, millennials are so lazy. I don't know, man, you never got out of your car once. I was a good gas jockey though. I was good, I liked it. But once a year, Fast Gas would have this contest for all the gas jockeys in Alberta. And the contest was whoever sold the most oil for that month would get like $150 or something added to their paycheck. And all 3 years that I was a gas jockey at Fast Gas, I won the contest. And I won it by lying. Okay, so here's what I would do. You would drive in and get gas, and I would say, can I check your oil? And if you said yes, you pop the hood, I would go in, and if you needed oil, I would tell you right away. If you did not need oil, I would take your dipstick. I have paper towel in this hand, dipstick in this hand, and I would pull it until it looked like you did need oil. And I would walk over and go, you need oil. And do you want me to get you a liter? And you would say yes. And I would take the funnel and I would pour like a little bit of oil into your and then I would throw the rest away. That, just so we know, that's stealing. That is stealing. Lying for financial gain. I think advertisers in our culture really walk a fine line toward lying. Beer commercials always make me laugh. You watch some beer commercials and it's as if they're just about telling you, if you drink this beer, I'll tell you one thing right now, you'll be great at beach volleyball. You'll be ripped. You'll be popular and you'll be incredibly attractive. And at the end of the day, after playing a lot of beach volleyball and drinking a lot of beer and just being attractive, you with six-pack abs and being popular, you'll sit around a fire and still have the intellectual capacity to have hard-hitting, deep, profound conversations about the meaning of life. Which is so weird to me, because in my life, I've known a lot of people who really, really like to drink beer. And not one of them, of all that I've met, has ever been good at beach volleyball. None of them have had six-pack abs, and I don't remember having many profound conversations with them either. In fact, about as profound as it often got with them is them starting out by saying, pull my finger. And then, and it kind of went from there. Thank you. Lying for financial gain. So it might be something like this. You get a full-time job. A full-time job insinuates that you work how many hours a week? 40. 8.5 is a little, that's kind of my point, right? So you say, hey, I got a full-time job. I'm blowing through like 31 and a half hours a week. I do nothing. I work for 8.5 hours. That's lying. That's lying. You should probably work 40 if you have a full-time job. Or you say to somebody, you do a job for them and you say, hey, would you pay me cash? And why do you say that? Pay me cash so that someday soon I can lie to the government and tell them that I made less money than I made so I don't have to pay taxes. A few years ago, I bought a used car from a guy in Vancouver, so we met in Coquitlam. And I really liked his car. I said, I'll take it. So together we went to an insurance branch or whatever, just off the Lougheed Highway. And we're filling out the transfer papers. And the guy behind the counter gets to this point, and he says, what do you want me to put in this blank? I'm like, what does the blank say? He says, purchase price. I said, I already told you the purchase price. He said, yeah, I know. What do you want me to write? I'm like, I don't understand. And then the guy that I'm buying it from says, hey, Mike, I know you're a pastor, so let me kind of fill you in. Okay, so whatever he writes in that blank, you're going to have to pay 12% tax on. So just tell him what you want him to write. I said, you know what I think we should do? It says purchase price. I'm crazy. I think we should just probably write down the purchase price. And they're both like, right. So they wrote it down, and we kind of finished the whole transfer. I get the new plates on, and a buddy comes to pick this guy up, the guy who sold me the car. And just before he leaves, he said, can I just ask you one question? He said, I really just have to know. Why did you write down the full purchase price? I know you're a pastor or anything, but it just doesn't make sense to me. And I wasn't sure how to answer him. And just that moment, an ambulance drove by on the Lougheed Highway. And I said, that's why. So what do you mean? I said, well, one day, my wife might need an ambulance. Or one of my sons or one of my daughters. And here's what I thought. I wanted to do my part to make sure they had one. So there's all kinds of stealing. There's all kind of ill-gotten gain. Lying for financial gain is stealing. Bullying behavior for financial gain is also stealing. Okay, James chapter 5 says it this way. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. So you're a boss, right? Your employee's supposed to be working 40, she's working 8.5, so you're a little grumpy because of that. But additionally, you know that the people who work for you actually deserve more money. But for some reason, you know that they can't really do anything about it, so you just don't pay them what they're worth. That's stealing. There's contractors in our region here who are quite well known They call themselves Christ followers, and they're quite well known for doing big projects and then deciding, I'm not going to pay the subcontractors in this project. And why do they do it? They do it because the subcontractors can't do anything about it. What are you going to do? Take me to court? The contractor has such deep pockets that the subcontractor knows it's not worth it. That's stealing. Negotiating for the win-lose is stealing. A few years ago, when we were dreaming of this place, I said to a friend of mine who is a successful business person, a bought-in Southsider, I said, man, I hope we can get a great deal on a piece of land for the church one day. He says, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what do you mean, what do I mean? A good deal, you know? I'm not talking about the theory of relativity here, or the existential struggle for meaning, or how they get the creamy caramel inside the caramel bar. I'm just like, what? A good deal. He says, well, he said, I'm with you if what you mean is we find someone who wants to sell a piece of land, we negotiate a price, and we both walk away happy. That's a good deal. He said, but if what you mean is that we find somebody in a real tough situation, and we pay them something for their land that we know is way less than it's worth, that's not a good deal. In fact, that's stealing. Negotiation is part of life. But as a Christ follower, let me be very clear. What we don't do is rip somebody off and then walk away going, thank you, Jesus, for that great deal. What do we negotiate for? We negotiate for the win-win, the win-win, the win-win, not the win-lose. Borrowing something and not paying it back is stealing. You lent her some money, and now you need it back. She's ghosting you. You cannot get a hold of her. But you see her on social media, and she's living an amazing life. Buying all sorts of cool stuff, going on all sorts of vacations. If you borrow something and you don't pay it back, that's stealing. The misappropriation of funds is stealing. It's a real fancy way of just saying this. You have a role or responsibility to give money to a certain place and you don't do it. For example, a father who knows that it's his role to support his kids. Food, clothing, shelter, you know. But for whatever reason, he decides that he's going to take that money and divert it in some way to himself. That's stealing. And the problem with stealing is that ill-gotten gain brings no lasting happiness. Counterintuitively, when you live your life looking to gain a life worth living by taking from other people, what you find is that by taking from others, you lose the very thing that you most wanted to gain. See, stealing actually, as it turns out, is a faith issue. One of the Hebrew words for God is the word Jireh. What it means is the Lord will provide. Stealing says, oh no, he won't. I need to look after me in whatever way that I need to look after me. Ill-gotten gain brings no lasting happiness, but right living does. But right living does. It's an interesting phrase, right living, right living. One of the first mentions that you'll find in the Bible about right living is in the story of a guy named Abraham. So Abraham is living the life, he's living in Ur of the Chaldeans of all places. I've never been there, okay? So I don't know where it is. So he's there, and his family is really, really wealthy. They're doing really well. And God shows up and says to Abraham, I want you to leave all of this behind. And I want you to set off to a far off distant country, Abraham. Why? Because I'm going to build a great nation out of you, Abraham. And all the nations on the planet are going to be blessed by you. And what did Abraham decide to do? He did it. He trusted God. And it was credited to him as righteousness, right living. Trusting God is right living. So ill-gotten gain brings no lasting happiness. What does? Right living, trusting God. So in this confusing, tough grind of finances and resource, how do we trust God? I think there's 4 steps that we can take. Number 1, work hard. Work hard. The Bible talks about the value of hard work. It's interesting, isn't it? Because the 4th commandment says, take a rest. And here inferred in the 8th commandment is the other side of the coin. The 8th commandment says, earn it. Take a rest. Why? Earn it. earn your rest. Work hard. It's amazing because there's people in our world who put a lot of effort into making sure they never have to work hard. So much so that I would suggest to you that if they put as much effort into working hard as they do to avoid hard work, they would probably be doing really, really well. This kind of twigged on me in my senior year of university. And it was not a spiritual epiphany. It was about a girl. I was engaged to Corinne. And I looked at Corinne one day and I thought to myself, she's amazing. She's just amazing. What does she deserve? She deserves the best. Well, she stuck with me. So at the very least, she deserves my best. And I honestly made a decision in that moment that I was just going to do my best. For the first time in my life, instead of cruising through school, I decided to do my very best in my classes. Do my very best in my part-time job. Just do my best. And even though it didn't start out as a spiritual epiphany, it sure ended that way. Because I found the joy of getting to the end of the day and knowing, hey, you know what? I made today my masterpiece. Not perfect, but I made today my masterpiece. Hard work is God's first plan. Second plan, believe it or not, is save and invest. Save and invest. In other words, don't live right to the limit of your paycheck every week, every month, every year. Have a little bit of margin, save it, and invest it. This is crazy. Ecclesiastes 11, verse 2. This is centuries before the stock market. Centuries. Invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You don't know what disaster might come upon the land. God is already preaching diversification. It requires patience though, right? It's not a quick fix, but just make every day your masterpiece. And here's what you're gonna do. Make today my masterpiece, and then tomorrow, masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. And eventually, the years will go by, the months will go by, the decades will go by, and you'll build something beautiful. God's plan. Number 1, work hard. Number 2, save and invest. And number 3, pray. Pray. Luke 11:13. Don't bargain with God. Be direct. I love that because sometimes we're a little weird in the head about finances. And maybe you want something, but you're just kind of embarrassed that you want it. Like, I really want a super soaker so that I can soak my, no, that's a dumb example, but I really want this item. God knows you want it. Don't come to God pretending to be somebody. Come to God as you. He loves you exactly where you're at. Be direct. Tell him exactly where you're at. Tell him exactly what you want. Don't bargain with God. Be direct. Ask for what you need. This is not a cat and mouse hide and seek game we're in. If your little boy asks for a serving of fish, do you scare him with a live snake on his plate? If your little girl asks for an egg, do you trick her with a spider? As bad as you are, you wouldn't think of such a thing. You're at least decent to your own kids. And don't you think the Father who conceived you in love will give the Holy Spirit when you ask him? I'm going to tell you something crazy, and I want to make sure you hear me, because this is a controversial statement I'm about to make. Listen real carefully. Every sincere prayer you pray, God will answer with a miracle. Every sincere prayer you pray, God will answer with a miracle. Sometimes the miracle will be that he will utterly and completely change your circumstances. You pray for a Lamborghini and one shows up in your driveway. I'm not denying it. If you pray for it and it happens, I'd love to take a drive. Okay, let's just keep that off to the side for a second, okay? That's what we normally refer to as a miracle. Sometimes God doesn't change your circumstances, he changes you. When you come to him sincerely and real, Psalm 37 verse 4 says it this way: delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. He's going to begin to change your heart, because sometimes the things that I thought I wanted, I didn't really want. Sometimes the things that I thought I needed so badly, I didn't really need. And God begins to either he changes my circumstances or begins to change me. And believe it or not, that might just be the bigger miracle. So 4 steps towards right living according to God's plan. Number 1, work hard. Number 2, save and invest. Number 3, pray. And number 4, generosity. Generosity. Proverbs 11, 24 to 25. The world of the generous gets larger and larger. The world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. So for me, this comes pretty easy. I was raised by very, very generous parents. I know I joke often about being Dutch, you know? I would say wooden shoes, wooden head, wouldn't listen, right? And I know sometimes people say, well, about Dutch people, they're cheap. My parents weren't. My parents aren't. So I really got a head start in this because I was raised by really generous parents. I remember when I was about 15 years old. And keep in mind, when I'm 15 years old, I've been a gas jockey for a couple years, right? And you notice when you first get a part-time job, your first paycheck, it's just like free money. This is crazy. Look at all this money. It's like $172. What am I going to do with all of it? And then after a couple years of working part-time jobs, you're like, what a grind. It's so hard to make money. So I had already kind of got a concept of the value of money. And my dad said to me one day, I want to go buy a horse trailer. You need to come with me. So I did, and we looked at a couple horse trailers, and then we went to a ranch. See, this rancher had died, and his widow was selling all his horse stuff off. And my dad took a look at the horse trailer that she was selling, and it was the best one that we had looked at that day. And he said, I'll take it. And she looked at him and she said, I don't really even know what a horse trailer is worth. Would you pay me blank for it? And when she said the amount, I was like, oh boy. It was way, way less than what it was worth, way less. And I had two thoughts simultaneously. 15-year-old Mike. Thought number one, I felt sorry for her. Her husband had died, and she didn't really have a clue what she was doing trying to sell this stuff off. Second thought, we're about to get a good deal. This is awesome. So I'm standing behind my dad, and he pulls out his checkbook. I already explained gas jockey. I'm not explaining checkbook. Okay, Google it. So I watch him writing the check, and he doesn't write the check for what she asked for. He writes the check for, I'm guessing, just a little bit more than that horse trailer was worth. And then he handed it to her. And I remember driving away. And even at 15 years old, I felt proud that was my dad. The world of the generous gets larger and larger. Now, I was thinking the other day, and maybe the comments over the next few minutes will be mainly directed to Christ followers. You know, whether you've been a Christian for a day or a decade or however long. Have you ever wondered, when you became a Christian, why didn't God just bonk you over the head and drag you to heaven? When you became a Christian, why didn't God just bonk you over the head and drag you to heaven? What are you doing here? See, I would suggest to you that we are here for that woman. I would suggest further that if we are not here for her, who are we here for? What in the world are we doing if we're not here for her? If we're not here for the widows and the orphans and the hurt and the broken and the desperate and the lost and the lonely and the needy, what in the world would we be doing here? Ephesians 4, anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work, doing something useful with their own hands, that they may have something to share with those in need. So a few years ago, I took a team of young men, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, down to Las Vegas for a basketball tournament. The Adidas Super 64. Tough tournament. And we did way, way better than we thought we were going to do. I remember one particular afternoon, we won a game that we did not think we were going to win. And we're driving back to our resort. Now keep in mind, this is 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. So the resort that we're staying at in Vegas is way, 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 way on the outskirts, in the quiet part of Vegas. You understand what I'm saying? And so we're driving on our way back to the resort, and one of the kids says, hey, coach. I'm like, yeah. He's like, are you proud of us? What do you mean? Well, we won that game. Are you proud? I'm like, I told you. I talked to you for 20 minutes after the game. I'm so proud of you guys. You did a great job. Way to go. He's like, yeah, cool. So are you so proud of us that you're going to take us to In-N-Out Burger for supper tonight? You don't really have to ask me twice to go In-N-Out Burger. So I'm like, I am, let's do it. So we get back to the resort, all the guys, they shower and they jump back in the van. We go to In-N-Out Burger, then we stopped at New York, so they could ride the roller coaster. And we're driving on our way out of town on Las Vegas Boulevard. And I don't know if you've ever been on Las Vegas Boulevard, but when the light turns red, you wait for a long time because there's just this sea of humanity that begins crossing. And so as we stopped, I looked beside me on the median, and there was a woman there, and she was begging for money. She seemed kind of old to me, but when I looked closer, it feels to me like her face looked old, but her eyes still looked young. Like her face looked old through hard life and hard living. Do you know what I mean? As I looked over, I felt like God tapped me on the shoulder and he said, give her all the money in your wallet. And I know, by the way, I know all the reasons why that's not always a good idea, but in that moment, I felt like God said, give her the money in your wallet. And you know what? I had $20 in my wallet. So I took out my wallet and I handed her the $20. And the kid sitting right behind me opened up his window, and all the other guys in the van started passing him money, and he gave her a bunch of money. And she looked at me and she said, where are you guys from? And I said, oh, we're from a place that you've definitely never heard of. I said, we're from Chilliwack, British Columbia. She said, Chilliwack, I've heard of it. I was like, what? She said, I'm from Abbotsford. And then she started going through a bunch of landmarks in our area. And she told me the high school that she graduated from. And I looked at the woman with the old face and the young eyes. Everyone in the van was quiet. She's quiet. And then the light turned green and I didn't move. I'm looking at her, this woman with an old face and young eyes. And then the guy behind me honks and she says, God bless you. And I say, God bless you, and we drive away. 15-minute drive to the resort, and not a kid in the van says a word. See, I don't know exactly what they were thinking, but I think I can guess. I think they were thinking, she's from Abbotsford. That could be my mom. That could be my sister. That could be my friend. That could be me. And I think about that moment a lot, because I think to myself, why in the world didn't God just conk me on the head and drag me to heaven when I became a Christian? I think it's for that. Like, I think I'm here for her, because if I'm not here for the woman with the old face and the young eyes standing on Las Vegas Boulevard, what in the world am I doing here? You say, well, Mike, that's a really extreme example. I'm not so sure. One of my best friends, George Franco, texted me last night. He said, please pray one of my drivers, a 15-year-old young man, stepped in front of his truck and committed suicide last night. I just remember that woman with the old face and the young eyes, and I think, look around, you guys, look around this city. Look around your family, look around at your friends, and there are people who are in desperate straits. You just maybe never know it. There's broken people, there's hurting people, there's lost people, there's lonely people. And here's what's crazy. They really, really, really matter. God loves her. Jesus died for her. And if I'm not here for her, what in the world am I doing here? The world of the generous just keeps getting larger. God, open my eyes, open my eyes, open my eyes. See, I don't think God placed me on this planet to be a sponge that just absorbs and absorbs and absorbs and absorbs. I think he placed me on this planet to be a faucet that pours out. And here's the crazy thing. I was thinking about a faucet. There's always more. See, I think we have a God who is the God of there is plenty more where that came from. Ill-gotten gain brings no lasting happiness. But counterintuitively, when I spend my life looking to gain a life worth living by giving to others, I find what I've been looking for all along. See, generosity is the opposite of stealing. Stealing is taking something that belongs to someone else. Generosity is giving something that belongs to you to someone else. That's why we're here, you guys. Online, in person, that's why we're here. What a privilege, what an honor, what a mission. So for Corinne and I, we just made the decision so many years ago that we're just going to try to be generous people. And we start by giving to the church. This is a church that we make no bones about it. We're here to bring help, hope, and home to the city and to this world. That's why we exist. That's why we're here. Help, hope, and home to the city and to this world. 3 weeks ago, we had a lady come into one of our services. She wasn't going to tell anybody, but on her way out, she decided she needed to. She's addicted. She's on the road to South Las Vegas Boulevard. She said, I need help. We got to connect her with one of our partners. She's in recovery, and at recovery, she has joined a Bible study. That happens every week. Last week, we had a woman come in with her kids. She's in an abusive relationship and didn't think there was any way out. She approached us. She said, could you help me? We said, we can. We got her out of there. We helped with food and shelter, and now we've been setting her up with opportunities to get a job and get work. I think that's why we're here. We're here to bring help, hope, and home. So I don't know where you're at with giving. Here's the great thing about giving. If you're a Christian and you never give anything, you're still going to heaven. Isn't that awesome? Like that's the message of the Bible. You don't got to give. You don't got to give. You get to. Man, I can't think of living a life that's not generous. I just can't imagine it. And what's crazy is they call it tithing in the Bible, like when you bring your first tenth to the church. What I found is like what logic might tell you is I say to you, hey, let's say you're tithing, and I come to you and I say, hey, can you help me out? You might say, I already gave at the office. I give to the church. I can't give to anybody else. You know what I found? The opposite's true. That when you tithe, God says, I'm gonna unlock this whole weird finance thing in our world for you. This whole grind, this whole, I can't find contentment, I can't find generosity, I worry about it all the time. God lifts it. And I become the person that I really, really, really want to be. So for Corinne and I, what we found is that we just have a passion to try to be frugal with ourselves so that we can be generous with others. And if that means tipping the person who cuts my hair, I don't know why I would, but let's just say they do a good job. Or the person who serves a meal, or supporting some kids at the Haiti Free School, we try to do that. Jesus said it this way, give. Hey, you don't got to. Isn't that awesome? You don't got to. Jesus says you get to, though. Give and it'll be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So what do we find? Contentment. In a world where if you ask almost anybody, hey, how much money do you need? What's the answer? Everyone's answer is almost the same. What? Just a little bit, just a little more. We found contentment. We found gratitude. We found joy. He's Jireh. The Lord will provide. The Lord has provided. And he created me, and I'm here on this planet, not to be a sponge, but to be a faucet, to pour out. Let's pray. Why don't you bow your heads and close your eyes just for a moment. And I don't know exactly where you're at. I don't know what's going on inside of your heart, inside of your life. But I just do know this. We can talk all we want about generosity, but can I just say one thing? That the most generous person who has ever lived is Jesus Christ, the Son of God. That God so loved the world, John 3:16 says, that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. That's it. That's the beginning that unlocks everything in my life. All the peace, all the hope, all the strength, all the generosity starts there by saying, God, you sent your Son. Thank you for the free gift. I accept it. So right now, if you've never done that, whether you're online or in person right now, with all heads bowed and all eyes closed, if today is the day you want to say, God, I accept it. I want you to change me and change me to change my family, change my marriage, change this world. With heads bowed, eyes closed. You want to just raise your hand right now, nice and high, so I can pray for you? That's amazing, amazing, amazing. If you're online, wherever you're watching, by the way, you can raise your hand wherever you are. That's great. You can put your hands down. Awesome. If you just raise your hand, I'm going to pray out loud, and I just invite you to pray silently along with me as I pray out loud. Dear God, thank you for sending Jesus. Thank you that we get to follow in the footsteps of a generous Father. And Jesus, thank you that you came and that you died and you rose again for me. Today, Jesus, I just ask that you would forgive my sins and move me past my past. And that you would give me the strength to follow you one next step at a time into the life that I was born to live today, tomorrow, and forever. I pray all this in your name. Amen. Amen. Can we celebrate, church? That's amazing. Amazing. So proud of you. If you just raised your hand, whether you're online or in person, just do me one quick favor. Sometime today, just text the keyword LIFE, L-I-F-E, to that same number, 604-670-3040. We're going to send you some resources and just some ways that we can connect with you, just to walk with you. And one last thing. I don't know where you're at with the giving journey. I don't. You don't got to, but you get to if you want. So if you're not somebody right now that has started giving yet at Southside, or maybe it's been a while and you want to step up and be a part of bringing help, hope, and home to this world, you can text that same number. I'm not saying it again. I'm sick of saying that same number over and over again. Text the keyword give. Give. Let's get this party started. Let's go. Let's change the world. What do you say? So I asked the band, yeah, you know what? We can celebrate that. Let's go. I asked the band to close with a song that they sang earlier, and the song is called Available. Available. I'm not perfect. I don't have every answer, but God, I'm available. I'm available. Use me. Use me to change this world in your name. So why don't we stand as the band plays?
Here we celebrate? What a good day to be together. Guys, that was awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for joining us today. And we hope we see you back next week, next Sunday. Stay cool. Have a great one.